If you're watching this, maybe you're like me. Maybe you're over 60. Maybe you gave your life to someone who crushed your soul. Tell me in the comments, where are you from? Have you ever trusted someone so much, only for them to leave you bleeding? Literally? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this hits your heart. Because today, I'm telling you how I went from a battered wife at 63 to the woman who made him beg for mercy. This isn't fiction. This is what they don't tell you about growing old. My name is Catherine Elridge. I'm 63 years old. I was married for 38 years. His name was Richard. A clean-shaven, charming bastard in a navy suit. Everyone in our church thought he was God's gift to women. They'd call us America's couple in our small Michigan town. But they didn't see the bruises under my cardigan. It started subtle. At first, it was words. You're not what you used to be. You're so forgetful, it's embarrassing. You need to lose weight. You're becoming grandmotherly. I was a grandmother. 3 beautiful grandchildren. But I wasn't allowed to visit them much. Richard said, "You'll just ruin their idea of what a woman should look like." I laughed it off at first. Made excuses. He's stressed. It's work. But one night, I burned the roast. And that's when I learned the new rules of our marriage. He grabbed the carving fork, held it so tight the veins in his hand popped, and he drove it through the table, just inches from my hand. Then came the slap. The first of many. I stayed. Not because I was weak, but because women like me were trained to stay. Church said submit. Society said smile. Friends said at least he didn't leave you. But he did. Just not all at once. It was the secretary, of course. Elena. 29. Skin like porcelain. Legs for days. She used to call me Mrs. Elridge with a syrupy voice. Now she calls my husband Daddy. I walked in on them in our guest house one afternoon. They didn't even try to hide it. Richard said, "You're lucky I didn't leave you sooner." The beatings got worse after that. He'd slap me in the bathroom, kick me when I was curled on the kitchen floor, twist my wrist and whisper, "Try calling the cops. No one will believe a wrinkled old fool." And he was right. When I did call once, the young officer barely looked me in the eye. "Domestic dispute," he wrote. No arrest. No help. He made me sleep in the laundry room. He changed all the bank passwords. He took my name off the deed of the house. And the worst part? No one came to check on me. But something strange happened one night. It was December. Snow falling like ash outside. Richard had just come back drunk from his office party. Elena was with him, laughing. Drunk on power. He told me to kneel. When I hesitated, he punched me. My lips split open. As I lay there, tasting blood, something inside me snapped. Something woke up. I crawled to the bathroom mirror, looked at my face. Then I whispered to myself, no more. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 40 years. I opened my secret journal. The one where I wrote everything. The passwords. The accounts. The blackmail material. The receipts he didn't know I kept. And I made a plan. Not just to leave, but to make him wish I never came into his life. I found it buried under a pile of old blankets in the attic. A red leather-bound notebook. Faded gold letters across the front. Grace Journal, 1981. Ironically, he'd named it after my middle name. Grace. I used to write poetry in it. Then diary entries. Then documentation. Every bruise. Every time. Dates. Details. His voice. Every lie Richard told the world, I recorded it all in that book. And now it was going to be my weapon. The next morning, Richard stormed into the kitchen screaming about coffee being too weak. He backhanded the mug across the room. It shattered at my feet. I should have married a real woman, he spat. Elena giggled behind him like it was all a joke. I didn't flinch this time. I stood there, staring right at him. He didn't notice the tiny recording device clipped under my robe. That night, I emailed the audio to myself. Labeled it, Strike One. I knew I had to play it smart. Women like me don't get justice. We have to take it. So I started building a file. Old bank statements he thought he shredded? I had copies. Offshore account numbers? Wrote those down when he was drunk once. Photos of bruises? Took them in the mirror. Saved them to a hidden USB drive. For 3 months. I played the role. I cooked. I cleaned. I smiled when he told his friends I was getting senile. I watched him pour drinks for Elena, whispering filth in her ear as I vacuumed. And every night I added to the notebook. One evening I overheard them in the study. He was laughing, drunk again. I've started the paperwork to get her declared incompetent. Once that's done, the house is all mine. And the stupid cow won't even remember her name. Elena replied, "You're evil." Then giggled like it was foreplay. That was the final spark. I wasn't going to run anymore. No, I was going to do what he feared the most. I was going to speak. Loudly. Publicly. I contacted Tamara Green, an old friend from college who is now an investigative journalist. She picked up on the first ring. "Catherine?" "Yes." "I thought you were dead." I whispered. "But now I need you to help me bury someone else." We met in secret at an old gas station off Route 53. She saw my face, the split lip, the bruised wrist, and burst into tears. I handed her the USB, the notebook, a full envelope of medical records. "You're not just taking him down," I said. "You're going to expose every single man who thinks women over 60 can be thrown away." Tamara asked one question. "Are you sure you want to go public?" "It'll destroy him, but it'll destroy your past too." I smiled. That man buried me alive. It's time I rise from the grave. Back home, I was a ghost walking among demons. Richard didn't notice the cameras I installed in the living room. Didn't notice the quiet strength in my posture. Didn't realize I'd begun transferring small amounts of money from his secret accounts back to mine. But one night, he noticed something. He walked in on me in the bathroom, holding my journal. His face turned to stone. "What's that?" "My prayer list," I lied. He grabbed it. Flipped through it. His eyes turned dark. "You're not that smart," he hissed. Then he punched me in the ribs. I dropped like a stone. Curled into a ball. Screamed silently. But I had what I needed. That camera saw everything. Tamara released the story exactly 1 week later. Headline: 63-year-old woman documents years of abuse. Husband tries to declare her incompetent. Within hours, the media was at our lawn. Reporters. Drones. Cameras. Richard ran outside, furious. But the more he screamed, the more the world saw what I had lived with. The secretary? Gone. Packed her bags and vanished into the night. Her real name was Nicole, by the way. Turns out she was already married to someone else. Police arrived. For once, they looked me in the eye. But here's the twist you didn't expect. He wasn't arrested. His lawyers swarmed in. Told the world I was mentally unstable. Alzheimer's, they claimed. She's confused. She's bitter. She made it all up. He stood on live TV and cried crocodile tears. But I wasn't scared anymore. Because what they didn't know was that I had a final ace up my sleeve. A twist so sharp, so devastating, it would bring Richard to his knees. They tried to silence me. Richard's attorney went on national television and held up a forged psychiatric evaluation, allegedly from a doctor in Detroit, claiming I had early-onset dementia. He's just trying to help his poor, confused wife, the host said. They showed old family photos, made me look like a doddering relic of a woman. But let me tell you something. You don't survive a lifetime of abuse without learning to survive war. And I had ammunition they didn't know about. It came from the smallest thing. A lipstick-stained wine glass. 3 weeks before the media storm, Richard had a private client dinner at the house. He told me to stay upstairs. Of course, I didn't. I stayed hidden in the dark hallway by the study and watched. Nicole, wasn't there. But another woman was. Young. Beautiful. Nervous. She kept looking over her shoulder. Richard was pouring her drinks. Heavy-handed. The conversation wasn't audible, but the body language was clear. She was being groomed. Manipulated. And then I saw him touch her wrist. Then her waist. She tensed. I took out my phone and hit record. It wasn't clear enough to get him arrested. But it was enough to tell a different story. One that made the world start to ask questions. Back in the present, while his lawyers painted me as senile, I uploaded that clip to a hidden Reddit forum under the name Wrinkled Justice 63. It went viral in 18 hours. The caption? This man beat me for years. He's still grooming women 1/3 his age. They said I was crazy. Am I? Thousands of comments poured in. Women from Michigan, Florida, Germany, even South Africa, sharing their stories, their pain. Some even recognizing Richard from past events and seminars. Turns out, Richard had more secrets than I ever imagined. And then came the phone call. Tamara called me one night, her voice tight and electric. You need to hear this. She played a voicemail. It was from one of Richard's former interns, a woman named Alexis Moreno. She had audio files, recordings from 5 years ago. Richard coercing her into sex, threatening her career. She had hidden them, afraid of the backlash. But now, emboldened by my story, she wanted to speak out. I arranged a meeting. We met at a quiet diner an hour out of town. Alexis was nervous, shaking. She handed me a thumb drive. On it, 5 recordings. Explicit. Vile. The kind of things no man can talk his way out of. You're the only one who ever stood up, she whispered. I was 23. I thought I'd die if I said anything. I took her hand. You're not alone anymore. That night, I made a decision. No more hints. No more secret uploads. I sent everything, the recordings, the wine glass video, Alexis's story, straight to the Daily Sentinel, a major regional paper. They ran a full Sunday exposé. Headline: Corporate Predator Unmasked. The Hidden Life of Richard Elridge. Subheading: Wife's secret recordings trigger flood of victim testimony. Richard lost everything in 4 days. His board removed him. His business partners dropped him. Sponsors vanished. His speaking tour was canceled. His face was smeared across every screen in America, no longer the golden CEO, but a predator in a silk tie. But the part that shook him most was the anonymous billboard I paid for outside our church. It read, "Women over 60 remember everything you thought we'd forget." He came home drunk the next night, disheveled, hysterical. He dropped to his knees in front of me, actually cried. "Kathy, please. I was lost. I made mistakes. We can fix this. Let's start over. I need you." I stared at the same hands that had once blackened my eye. He reached to touch my face. I slapped his hand away. "You don't get to cry," I said. Then I whispered, "Strike 3. He looked confused. That's when the police lights lit up the window. I had Alexis file her charges. I had the evidence. And this time, the DA couldn't ignore it. They took him away. In cuffs. In front of the same neighborhood that used to worship him. And me? I lit a match in the fireplace. Held the red notebook for the last time. Then dropped it into the flames. Because the past didn't own me anymore. I wasn't just a survivor now. I was the storm. You'd think the moment he was arrested, I'd feel peace. I didn't. I stood there in that cold, echoing house, watching the red and blue lights fade from the window. His screams still echoed in the hallway. And all I could think was, what now? Because when you survive 38 years of terror, your body forgets how to live without fear. I jumped when the phone rang. Slept with the lamp on. Flinched at the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway, even though no one else was there. It's strange. When the devil leaves, you realize the devil lived inside you too. Feeding on your doubt. Your silence. The media tried calling for interviews. I ignored them. I didn't want fame. I wanted silence. But I couldn't disappear just yet. Because something was off. 3 days after the arrest, I received a letter. No stamp. No return address. Just slid under my door while I was in the kitchen. I opened it carefully. My hand shook. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Of me. Sleeping in bed. The sheets were the same ones from last night. Someone had been in my house. I installed locks. Double bolts. I called the police. They found nothing. But I felt something. Eyes. Watching. I checked the attic. The crawl space. Every inch of that house. Nothing. Still. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Then came the second letter. This time, it wasn't a photo. It was a page torn from my old journal. The one I had burned. The entry was dated 1992. It read, "He slapped me for the first time tonight." I told him it was okay. I told myself he was just tired. I wonder if I'll ever stop lying to myself. I froze. I had destroyed that book. No one else had ever read it. So how did someone have a piece of it? I called Tamara. She came over, scanned the note. Where was it burned? She asked. In the fireplace, I said. We checked, pulled out the ash bin, and found something shocking. The journal was gone. Someone had removed it before the fire. I had been watched even then. That's when I remembered the maintenance man. A quiet, thin man named Derek, who came once a month to check the heater. He'd always been polite. Too quiet. Richard had hired him personally. And once I thought about it, he was always around on the worst days. I pulled out the old service logs. Sure enough, Derek had signed in the same day I found the attic notebook. And his last visit? 2 days before Richard was arrested. Tamara and I confronted the heating company. They said Derek hadn't worked there in months. Hadn't even submitted a timesheet in a year. He'd been using their name, uniform, tools, without them knowing. We called the police. They searched my home with dogs this time. In the garage wall, behind a false panel, they found an old flip phone with dozens of grainy pictures of me, a key to my back door, and pages from my journal. He had been living in the empty guest house, the one Richard used to sleep with his women. Sleeping, watching, waiting. I thought Richard was the only monster. But this was planned. I told the cops everything. They launched a manhunt for Derek. But I knew he wouldn't be easy to find. Because Derek wasn't just a stalker. He was a collector. A man obsessed with women like me, broken, isolated, over 60. And I had just become his unfinished masterpiece. One night later, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. Nothing. Then a whisper. You look better when you cry, Kathy. Click. I dropped the phone. And in that moment, I knew Richard wasn't the end of my nightmare. He was just the door. And what was coming now was far worse. I didn't leave the house for a week. I kept the windows covered, sat in silence, clutching a kitchen knife I didn't know how to use. Every creak in the hallway made my heart stutter. Every knock at the door felt like death in disguise. Tamara stayed with me the first 2 nights, then said she had to go cover the Derek story. She promised she'd be back, but she never came back. Not once. No call. No message. Not even a text. I should have known. The thing about betrayal is, you start noticing it late. The missing minutes. The pauses in conversations. The eyes that look through you, not at you. Tamara used to ask questions like, what would you do if this story blew up? What if people found out about the other things? And she'd smile like it was just curiosity. But it wasn't. I checked the news one night, finally gave in. The Derek case was splashed across headlines. But what caught my eye was the byline. Tamara Green. But the article wasn't about Derek. It was about me. Titled, The Widow Who Lured Monsters Inside Catherine Elridge's House of Secrets. She made me look like bait. Said I invited danger by staying silent. That I drew predators like moths to flame. She published quotes I never said. Twisted my diary entries. Even hinted that maybe I lied about Richard too. She sold me for a headline. I stared at the screen, shaking. That woman held my hand when I cried. She saw my bruises. Held my broken ribs while I vomited blood. And still, she spun me like fiction. 2 nights later, a brick came through my window. Wrapped in duct tape. Inside the tape, a printed comment from her article. Circled in red ink. These old hags always lie for attention. I spent the night in the bathtub, clutching my knife. When the sun rose, I looked like a corpse. But something inside me had lit again. Not fear. Rage. I picked up the pieces of that brick and said aloud, "You want a monster? I'll show you one." I needed evidence. Proof. So I hacked Tamara's cloud storage. Yes, me 63, arthritis in both hands, using tutorials from Reddit like a teenager. What I found? Unforgivable. Audio files. Tamara interviewing Richard. Weeks before I even gave her my story. They laughed together. Plotted how to make this thing juicy. She coached him on what to say in interviews. Even helped him script the tears he cried on television. It was all a setup. She never cared about exposing abuse. She cared about clicks. About becoming the journalist who saved me. But she couldn't save what she helped destroy. I copied everything. Built a new folder, green_conspiracy. Uploaded it to 5 backup drives. One in the mailbox of every woman in my old book club. Then I made a call. To her editor. A woman named Judy Lambert. Sharp voice. No nonsense. I told her, "You're about to lose your job if you don't listen to what your star reporter did." 10 minutes later, she had the files. Tomorrow's article was pulled within 3 hours. She was suspended by morning. But I didn't feel better. Because none of this stopped him. Derek was still out there. And I knew what he wanted now wasn't just obsession. It was revenge. That night, the lights flickered in my hallway. Then the power went out. I checked my phone, battery dead. I lit a candle, heart pounding. As I walked down the stairs, I found a single rose on the bottom step. Real. Fresh. Thorns still wet with dew. Attached was a note, "You belong to me now." I didn't scream. I didn't run. I went to the closet. Opened the black case I hadn't touched in 30 years. Inside was my father's revolver. Loaded. I sat at the kitchen table. And waited for the knock. Because this time, I wasn't going to be the one who bled. You think you're too old to become dangerous. That your bones are too fragile. Your hands too slow. That the world has passed you by, left you nothing but pills and pity. But when someone walks into your life with evil in their eyes, a gun in your lap feels just right. It was 2:13 a.m. when I heard the doorknob twist. Not forcefully. Not loud. Patient. Like someone who knew the lock. Who had turned it before. I didn't move. Sat in my chair, revolver resting across my lap. The kitchen was dark. Except for one flickering candle. The door clicked open. A boot crossed the threshold. He was wearing gloves. A mask. A thin jacket. Moved like a shadow with lungs. He didn't speak. But I knew it was Derek. Even before he stepped into the light. He saw me. And smiled. "You look smaller in person," he said. His voice was calm. Like a nurse about to draw blood. I didn't blink. "You look dumber than I remember." He tilted his head. "You were supposed to be asleep." I cocked the gun. Didn't lift it yet. "I sleep with one eye open now," I said. "Thanks to men like you." He took a slow step closer. "Do it," he whispered. "You want to, don't you?" I said nothing. But my finger itched on the trigger. He kept walking. Until he was 2 feet from me. Then he leaned in. Close. Close enough for me to smell him, sweat, mildew, old leather. He whispered, "You won't shoot me, Kathy. Because deep down, you liked being watched. You miss the attention. You miss being wanted." I pulled the trigger. Click. Misfire. His smile cracked wide like a scar splitting open. He lunged. I fell backward in the chair, smashing into the floor. Gun skidded across the tiles. He was on top of me in seconds. Hands on my wrists. Knees crushing my hips. Stupid old, I spat in his face. Then I did what 63 years of being a nice wife had never let me do. I screamed. Not words. War. A raw animal scream from the bottom of my soul. It startled him, just enough. I jammed my thumb into his eye. He howled. I kneed him in the groin. Rolled away. Snatched the revolver. Stood. Fired again. Boom. It missed. But that wasn't the point. It made him run. He crashed through the back door like a wounded animal. Disappeared into the dark. Police came 10 minutes later. Too late, as always. But this time, I wasn't crying. This time, I didn't feel broken. I felt awakened. The next morning, I called Alexis. Told her to meet me at my old church. We sat in the back pew. "I need to know something," I said. "Did Richard ever mention Derek to you?" She swallowed hard. Not directly. But once. I heard him say something about handlers. Plural. People who kept his secrets quiet. That word stuck with me. Handlers. This wasn't just a stalker. This was a network. I called Judy, Tamara's ex-editor. Told her I had a bigger story. One about women being hunted. Controlled. Silenced. By men who passed them like currency. She was quiet. Then said, "Write it yourself." I'll publish every word. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I was ready. Later that week, I received a package on my porch. No return address. Inside was a single object, a woman's molar, wrapped in lace. There was no note, just a smudge of lipstick on the tissue. The same brand I used to wear before Richard started hitting me when I wore makeup. That night, I opened a blank Word document. Typed the first line, "I'm writing this so no one forgets what they did to us." I titled it, "Hollow Bones, the Women They Thought Would Break," because they thought we'd shatter quietly. But I was just beginning to roar. Do you know what it's like to find out you weren't the only one? Not in a comforting way. Not in a "you're not alone" sort of way. But in a sick, cold realization that he did it to others again and again and again. The deeper I dug, the more names I found. Hidden in receipts. Old ledgers. Emails that Richard never deleted. He was sloppy when he was drunk. He'd forward things he shouldn't have. One folder on his old laptop was named Personal Affairs. Inside, dozens of profiles. Women. All between 55 and 70. Widows. Divorcees. Women who'd lost children, jobs, homes. Women with no one to miss them. Their names were listed with notes. Sandra H., compliant. Lonely. Drinks alone. Margot T., resistant. Needs pain. L., McFadden, won't last long. I vomited after reading the fifth one. Because the last profile in that folder was mine. Catherine E., ripe. Still proud. Break slowly. Make her beg. This wasn't love. This wasn't abuse. This was trafficking. And not just of bodies. Of pain. They fed on our despair. Collected it. Monetized it. I contacted a woman I hadn't spoken to in 18 years. Estelle Marquez. She used to be Richard's assistant before Tamara. She'd vanished after her husband accidentally overdosed. But I tracked her down through a support group thread for women over 60 dealing with narcissistic partners. I messaged her anonymously. She replied in under an hour, "I've been waiting for someone to ask." We met in a diner outside Albany. She looked like hell, thin, wired, jumpy. She wore gloves in July. Said it kept her from picking her skin. Over pie and lukewarm coffee, she told me everything. There was a list, she said. Women Richard and his network scouted. They had code names. The Choir. Why? She looked down. Whispered, because they sang before they died. My chest went cold. She told me about handlers, men like Derek. Paid to get close. Watch. Record. Turn our cries into products. They sold our trauma as performance. To sick men on encrypted sites. Some of the women were filmed. Others simply disappeared. Estelle had escaped after recording a meeting. It was Richard, Derek, and 2 others she wouldn't name. She said if I got too loud, I'd join the choir. I told her I wasn't scared anymore. She smiled, a sad, shattered thing. You should be. That night, I drove home through thick fog. The kind that looks like it's breathing. I pulled into the driveway. Noticed my porch light was out. And something was nailed to the door. I got closer. It was a photograph. Me and Estelle. In the diner. On the back was scrawled in Sharpie, "Sopranos die first." I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I planned. By morning, I had opened a new file. One that wasn't for editors. Or police. This one was for me. I named it Revenge. Inside, I listed the names I knew. 1. Richard Elridge 2. Derek Tate 3. Tamara Green 4. Redacted, Estelle's missing name 5. The collector only mentioned in Richard's notebook. I wrote beside each, "Det to pay," then I mailed a copy to myself. Registered. Certified. With a note, if I disappear, this goes public. It wouldn't stop them. But it would make it messy. And men like them? They hate messy. Later that week, I saw a woman outside the pharmacy. She had a bruise beneath her sunglasses. Limped slightly. I asked if she needed help. She said her husband was just tired. I knew that line. I'd said it 1,000 times. I handed her a card I had printed the night before. Widows of the living. We see you. We believe you. We help you fight. She took it. Didn't say anything, but her hands trembled as she held it. That's when I realized something. I wasn't broken. I was sharp. And broken things? They cut deeper than anyone expects. There's a special kind of betrayal that doesn't make you cry. It makes you numb. The kind where your mind shuts off just so your heart doesn't combust. Where your breath goes shallow. And all you can think is, no, not him. Please not him. I was organizing the revenge file. One name at a time. Mapping locations. Connections. Trying to piece together who the collector might be. That's when I found a photo tucked deep in Richard's encrypted folder. It wasn't labeled. Just titled, 1986_reunion. A group of men, smiling at a conference table. Richard in the middle. Derek 2 seats away. And at the far end, James Elridge. Richard's older brother. My former brother-in-law. The man who walked me down the aisle when my father couldn't. The man who toasted at my wedding. Who sent me Christmas cards long after Richard stopped. The only one who ever said sorry when the divorce finalized. He was in on it. I stared at that photo for an hour. Kept zooming in like it would erase him. But there was no denying it. Behind him, on a whiteboard, were scribbled names. Women's names. Some I recognized from the folder. Others I didn't. Next to each name, status, acquired/broken/lost. And James? He was pointing at one of the names with a laser pen. Smiling. I called Alexis. Told her everything. She went silent. Then whispered, Catherine, he's on the board of the Eldridge Foundation. I almost dropped the phone. The Eldridge Foundation was the same organization that helped fund my surgeries. Paid for Richard's legal team. Donated to shelters for abused women. They were laundering guilt through charity. Alexis agreed to meet. We sat in her car in the middle of a strip mall parking lot. It's a ring, she said. I'm sure of it now. Funded through fake outreach groups. Recruiting men from law firms, hospitals, law enforcement. I felt dizzy. Everything felt corrupted. Even my healing. She pulled a flash drive from her coat. Take this. I got it from a friend at the foundation. It's encrypted, but I've seen the thumbnails. One of them is of you, Catherine. Wearing that blue sundress from the lake house. You were folding laundry. I stared at the drive in my hand. Shaking. I hadn't worn that dress in 15 years. Which meant they'd been watching me since before the abuse even started. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table. Drive in one hand. Old revolver in the other. And I made a decision. I called James. Catherine, he answered, surprised. His voice hadn't aged. Still smooth. Still measured. I want to meet, I said. I found a box of Richard's things. Thought you might want them. Silence. Then he said, where? My father's old cabin. It's private. He agreed too quickly. The next morning, I drove to that rotting place tucked deep in the Catskills. The cabin smelled like mold and grief. But it was mine. My father's hunting rifles still hung on the wall. I cleaned one. Loaded it. Waited. James arrived at noon. Wearing slacks. Casual. Like he was visiting a museum. He hugged me. I didn't move. We sat on the porch. He drank iced tea. I drank nothing. I never stopped caring about you, he said, looking out at the trees. Richard was a mistake. I told you that. You told me after he broke my jaw. He looked at me. Why am I here, Catherine? I handed him the photo from 1986. He stared. Didn't flinch. Ah, he said. Guess the past always comes back. That's when I pulled out the flash drive. Held it up. His face changed. Eyes narrowed. Smile faded. I'll need that, he said. I know. He stood. I won't hurt you, he said softly. But I can't let you publish what's on that drive. I stood too. Held the rifle. He looked at it. You won't do it, he whispered. You never had it in you. That's what made you perfect. My hands trembled. But my voice was clear. I used to be prey. Then I stepped forward, barrel to his chest. Now I'm the trap. He didn't blink. Didn't run. Just smiled again, more dead than alive. You're not the first to try. No, I said. But I'll be the one who finishes it. People think rage is loud. But the most dangerous kind is quiet. It sits beside you like a lover. Holds your hand. Tells you you're right. You're strong. Do it. And after a while, you start listening. James didn't run, even with a rifle pressed to his chest. Because men like him, they think women over 60 can't do much more than cry and remember birthdays. I pulled the hammer back. He didn't flinch. Just whispered, "You won't kill me. You want me to suffer, not die." He wasn't wrong. I lowered the gun and cracked the butt against his knee instead. Hard. He screamed. Collapsed sideways. Feel that? I hissed. That's what arthritis feels like. Try dragging that for the next 20 years. I zip-tied his hands behind his back. Sat him in the shed behind the cabin. No food. No light. No dignity. I gave him just one thing. A photograph of my face from that surveillance footage. Folded in half. So only my bruised eye showed. For 3 days, he stayed there. I visited twice a day. Not to talk. To read. Court transcripts. Emails. Testimonials from the other women in the choir. Some were dead. Some missing. But one? She survived. Her name was Lucinda Brandt. 72, lived in a trailer park in rural Indiana. Left her husband in 1994. No kids. No family. But she left behind a diary. Found by a neighbor after a flood. I got it from Judy. Scanned pages. Burned edges. But legible. Lucinda wrote things that made my teeth ache. They filmed me while I cried in the bath. Told me it made them feel holy. He said, "We break older women because no one believes them." I prayed every night someone would come. No one ever did. I showed James her photo. He looked away. "Do you know what it's like," I asked, "to die while still alive?" He said nothing. So I slammed the diary on the table. And read every page. Out loud. By the time I was done, James was sobbing. Not out of guilt. Out of fear. He finally knew I wasn't bluffing. I would ruin him. And everything he built. I opened my phone. Started filming. "I'm Catherine Elridge," I said to the camera. "I'm 63. Divorced. Survived a marriage built on blood and silence." I turned the camera to James. This man, James Elridge, helped fund a network that preyed on women over 60. Widows. Divorced. Grieving. James whimpered. I stepped closer. "Say it," I said. He didn't. So I grabbed the rifle again. Pressed it against his thigh. He screamed. "Say it." I helped them," he sobbed. "I gave them names. I knew what they were doing." I leaned in. "And what were they doing?" He choked on his breath. "Breaking women." I ended the video. Didn't post it yet. But I sent copies to 3 people, Judy, Alexis, Tamara's mother. I labeled it, in case I disappear. Later that night, I stood on the porch, staring into the woods. That rage? Still there. Still warm beside me. But something else stirred. Quiet. Not peace. Not yet. But space. The kind you make when the monster inside finally has room to breathe. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end? Soft. Gentle. Female. "You're not done, Catherine," she said. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, Lucinda's granddaughter. "And I have something you need to hear. Grief has a voice. Sometimes it wails. Sometimes it whispers. But the kind of grief that comes from generational destruction? That kind? It doesn't make a sound. It archives itself. Until someone like me rips the drawer open." Her name was Alana Brandt. Lucinda's granddaughter. Voice like silk dragged across stone. "You don't know me," she said over the phone, "but I've watched every interview you gave. I've read your blog. I knew Lucinda wasn't crazy. They made her feel like she was. You said her name out loud. That matters." "I found her journal," I said quietly. She paused. "Then I think you're ready for what comes next." We met in a community library in upstate Pennsylvania. She wore a navy coat, hair pinned up, sunglasses even indoors. The kind of woman who'd learned the hard way that being noticed was dangerous. She handed me a manila envelope across the table. Inside, a cassette tape, an old photo, and a signed affidavit from 1988. The photo showed Lucinda, bruised, standing beside Derek Tate. His arm was around her shoulder. Not as a lover, as a handler. Written on the back, 1986. Elridge Fund Event. I was bait. I stared at Alana. What is this? She leaned in. My grandmother wasn't just a victim. She was an informant. The tape was her voice. A confession. Recorded weeks before she vanished in 1990. Alana had digitized it. She played it on her phone. Lucinda's voice cracked through the air like old firewood. They call it the silent choir. They pick women with no roots left. Use grief like a harness. Promise them money, affection, visibility. Then rip it away. I thought I was helping expose it, but I was feeding it. Her voice broke. Then came the twist. There's a journal. A real one. With names, videos, locations. I hid it in a mausoleum. Oaklawn Cemetery. Elridge Crypt. They think I'm dead. But I'm not. Not until someone makes them burn. My blood froze. The Elridge Crypt. Richard's family tomb. The one we visited twice. Once for his father's funeral. Once for his brother's fake burial after that boating accident. Why would she hide it there? I asked. Because no one would look, Alana whispered. And if they did, they'd be too afraid to open it. That night, I drove back to the Elridge estate. The cemetery sat behind wrought iron gates. I wore black gloves. Pulled my hair into a bun. No trace of the woman Richard used to photograph. I brought bolt cutters. And a crowbar. The mausoleum was colder than outside. Inside, marble walls. 3 names etched in stone. George Elridge, 1921 to 1978. Richard Elridge, 1958. No death date, Mason Elridge, 1963 to 1989. His dead brother. I ran my fingers over Mason's plaque. And found it. A loose tile. Behind it, a hollow cavity. And inside, the journal. Wrapped in plastic. Thicker than a Bible. And older than sin. I opened the first page. Lucinda's handwriting, trembling and jagged. If you're reading this, you survived what I didn't. This isn't just about men. It's about legacy. It's about the auction. They sold us. Not for sex. For control. The men who beat us? They were just pawns. The real buyers wear suits and call themselves donors. I flipped through pages, names of judges, CEOs, senators. Next to each name, dates. Payment logs. Choral selections. They labeled us like we were instruments. Lucinda included photographs. One showed a woman strung up by her wrists in a ballroom. Another, a woman with duct tape over her mouth, piano wire scars on her back. Underneath one photo, Margot T. They told her it was performance art. She died in '87. Her obituary said she fell. I sat in that crypt and cried until my stomach cramped. Then I snapped photos of every page. Every entry. Every name. When I got home, I placed the journal in a fireproof safe. But before I locked it, I added one more name to the last page, Catherine Elridge, survivor. Status, not broken. Not forgotten. Not forgiving. They wanted silence. But I was preparing for a symphony of screams. Because now, I had the score. And the conductor's baton. There's a violence in knowing. Not the physical kind, not bruises or bleeding. A deeper kind. The kind that poisons memory. When you find out someone you loved, truly trusted, was never who you thought. Every birthday becomes a lie. Every smile becomes a mask. And suddenly, even your happiest days feel horrific. I locked the journal inside a steel safe under my floorboards. I thought that would calm me. But instead, I couldn't sleep. Because one name kept haunting me, Margaret D. Ellison. Written in Lucinda's careful script. Next to the word, recruiter, Tier 1/family linked. Recruiter. A woman? I racked my brain. Did I know a Margaret? Then I saw the initials again. M. D. Ellison. And my whole body turned to ice. Margaret Diane Ellison. My mother's best friend. My godmother. She visited every Christmas. Sent me care packages in college. Brought wine when Richard proposed. She was in the photos at my wedding. She spoke at my mother's funeral. She kissed my forehead after Richard broke my ribs. I called Alexis. Told her everything. She went quiet. Then said, Ellison, She runs 3 nonprofits, all domestic wellness fronts. Guess who funded them? My heart raced. Who? James Elridge. I hung up the phone and vomited. This wasn't just old money and bad men. It was family. It was the women beside us. The ones who smiled while they helped orchestrate hell. I drove to Margaret's estate the next day. Large, gated, immaculate. The kind of place built to look gentle. Inside, nothing but quiet. She greeted me in a white blouse and pearls. "Catherine," she gasped. "I've missed you." I forced a smile. Needed to see a familiar face. She poured tea. Ginger chamomile. My favorite. She remembered. "Have you heard from Richard?" she asked softly. "No, but I've heard from someone else." Her eyes narrowed. Lucinda Brandt's granddaughter. Margaret froze. Her hand trembled, barely, almost imperceptible. But I caught it. The mask cracked. "You should be careful," she said finally. "Digging through graves doesn't always bring up bones. Sometimes it brings rot." "I already found the rot," I replied. "It has your initials on it." Silence. Then her face dropped the performance. Margaret leaned in. Voice low. Predatory. "Do you think your mother didn't know?" My breath hitched. "What?" "She donated to the choir. Didn't she ever tell you where the money went?" I shook my head. She smiled. "Your mother was one of us. Before she lost her mind." The room spun. "I don't believe you." Margaret stood, walked toward a painting on the wall, pulled it aside. Behind it? A photo. My mother. Standing with Margaret. And James. And Richard. All smiling. My mother's handwriting on the frame, "To the women who made me powerful." I stumbled back. Hit the table. My tea spilled. Margaret didn't move. "Not every woman is a victim, Catherine," she said. "Some of us learned the rules and played better." I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't aging. She was sharpening. Like a dagger left in a drawer too long. "You let them hurt me," I whispered. She tilted her head. "They let me rise." I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. "Already recording." Her eyes widened. "You bitch." I turned and ran. She chased me down the hall, screaming threats. I made it to the car, locked the doors, peeled away before she reached the gate. That night, I uploaded the footage to 4 drives. Sent one to Alexis, one to a journalist I trusted, one to a private archive. The last? I hid in a church confessional in Queens, behind the carved wood under Psalm 27. "Let the Lord be my witness. Let the world be my jury." But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because now I knew this wasn't a men's club. This wasn't a rogue circle of predators. This was generational, global, and run by the very women who wore pearls and gave speeches on healing. The next day, I wrote a name on the wall of my basement. In red, Margaret. Then, beneath it, 3 more. And I sharpened the tip of my vengeance. Because I wasn't here to expose them. I was here to bury them alive. Some wars are fought in daylight. With cameras. Speeches. Handshakes. Mine? Started with fire. Not metaphor. Not poetry. Real. Gasoline-soaked, match-lit vengeance. 3 days after Margaret's mask fell, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, a single photo. A burned doll. Drenched in red paint. Pinned to a tree. A note in block letters. "You are not God. Stay in your cage." Choir, no signature. Just fear. But fear is a poor leash for a woman who's already bled to death. That same night, I drove back to Margaret's estate. No camera. No phone. Just a jerrycan, bolt cutters, and a crowbar. I wore black gloves. Tied my hair tight. Silence became my armor. Security lights blinked across the lawn. I cut through the irrigation ditch. Found the east side fuse box. Snapped it open with the crowbar. Darkness swallowed the mansion. Inside, I knew the layout. 3rd door left of the entry, her study. I kicked it open. She was there. In her robe. Barefoot. Holding a candle. "Catherine," she whispered. "Don't speak." I poured gasoline across her desk. Her books. The priceless rug she bought in Paris. She stared, lips trembling. I raised you like my own, you auctioned me, I spat. She reached for the drawer, a gun, maybe. I flipped the candle across the desk. Whoosh. Flames leapt like beasts. She screamed. Tried to stomp the fire. But I was already gone. Through the window. Across the lawn. Vanished. The next morning, the news broke. Fire destroys historic Pennsylvania mansion. Owner, Margaret Ellison, hospitalized for burns and smoke inhalation. No one mentioned arson. Not yet. But then came the whispers. Blogs. Forums. Encrypted group chats. And then the video. A burner account uploaded it. Margaret's confession. Everything. The nonprofits. The auctions. My mother. Millions watched it within hours. She became a villain overnight. Talk shows called her the Pearl Demon. Matriarch of manipulation. And me? Some called me dangerous. Others called me brave. But mostly, they called me right. That same day, Alexis called me. Voice shaking. Someone tried to break into my place. They left a note. No words. Just a photo of you. In college. I felt my stomach turn. They're escalating. They want you scared, she whispered. But they don't know what we've survived. I booked a motel under a fake name. Shaved my head. Changed my walk. Wore thick glasses and army boots. Because this next part wasn't about escape. It was about slaughter. The Journal listed 6 major buyers. 3 dead. 2 overseas. 1 still in New York. Elliot S. Marston. A judge. Awarded for his work in protecting vulnerable women. He'd signed off on dozens of divorce asset freezes, always against women over 60. Always siding with abusers. Lucinda called him the gatekeeper. I snuck into one of his public charity events. Dressed as a caterer. Silent. Invisible. Until I saw him. White beard. Thin lips. Eyes that had stared at too many women begging for mercy. I followed him to the restroom hallway. Stood outside the door. Recorded this on my burner phone. This is Catherine Elridge. I'm about to confront the man who turned broken women into currency. He came out. I stepped into his path. His eyes met mine. Confused. Then recognition. I know you. I smiled. You sentenced me. I jammed the taser into his ribs. He crumpled. Whimpering. I whispered, say her name. He blinked. Lucinda. Say it. Or I'll post your video tonight. He tried to get up. I kicked his knee. Hard. He screamed. Lucinda, he gasped. Lucinda Brandt. I crouched beside him. You sentenced her to lose everything. Property, identity rights. For what? He shook his head. I didn't. I played his own voice from an old court recording. Him laughing. Calling her unstable, childless, too hysterical to testify. I ended the video. Walked out. Left him broken on marble tile, surrounded by his own corruption. And by midnight, that clip was viral. 2 of the 6 names exposed. 1 near dead. 1 disgraced. And the others? Getting desperate. Alexis messaged me. They're offering $50,000 for info on you. Dead or alive. I replied, good. That means they're bleeding. Later that night, I looked in the mirror. No hair. No makeup. No mask. Just me. The woman they tried to erase. And I pressed record. For the first time, I spoke directly to the camera, if you're watching this. My name is Catherine Elridge. I'm 63 years old. And I survived hell built by people who called me sister, daughter, wife. I want you to like this video. Subscribe. Share it with every woman over 60 who ever felt like her silence was safer. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever felt betrayed by family, by love, by trust. I'll read every single one. I paused, then added, and to the ones still watching from the shadows, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not done. I'm just getting started. Vengeance has a smell. Not smoke. Not blood. It's the cold stench of sacrifice. Of someone paying the price you never meant them to. It happened just after midnight. Rain had turned the alley into slush. I was in a cheap motel on the edge of Jersey. Room 117. No window locks. 1 working light. I was sorting through the next name on my list, Emery Blackstone, a pharmaceutical CEO with wellness retreats across 4 states. That's when the text came from Alexis. No words. Just a single image. Her front door kicked in. I called. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. My hand shook. I threw on a coat, grabbed my knife, and bolted into the storm. It took me 90 minutes to reach her building. It was swarming with police. The doorman recognized me. His eyes were glassy. Red. Are you Catherine? I nodded. He whispered, they took her. They left a symbol drawn in lipstick on her fridge. A treble clef. My knees buckled. The choir. Detectives asked questions. I gave them nothing. Because what could I say? They kidnapped her because I exposed a child trafficking network disguised as a charity and burned down a mansion while wearing a wig from a flea market? No, this wasn't a case the cops could solve. This was war. At 3 a.m., I got the message. A burner phone vibrated on the motel sink. Unknown number. I answered. Nothing. Then, music. Faint. Classical. Schubert's Death and the Maiden. I knew the piece. Lucinda wrote about it in her journal. Said the choir played it whenever a whistle silencer was deployed. Then a voice. Male. Calm. Refined. You touched Margaret. You humiliated Marston. But now the balance must be restored. I clutched the phone tighter. If you want to see Alexis alive, go to the place where Grace died. You have until dawn. Click. Grace. That was her middle name. Mine too. Our mothers were sisters. But where Grace died meant only one place, my childhood home. Burned down in 2004. Now just an empty lot. Condemned. Forgotten. I arrived before sunrise. The air smelled of wet leaves and mold. Ashes still lingered in the dirt like memory spores. And in the center of the lot, a single folding chair. And a hole, about 4 feet wide. And inside, a body. I screamed. Jumped down. Clutched the hands, cold, soft, familiar. Alexis. But she moved. Barely. Her eyes fluttered open. I sobbed. She whispered, they wanted me to tell them where you are. I said, you're already inside them. I held her to my chest. Promised her she wasn't alone. We spent the next 18 minutes in that well. Waiting. Listening. But no one came. This wasn't a message. It was a warning. Next time, we bury her. I got her to a private clinic. Paid in cash. Used a fake name, Marielle Brent. They treated her bruises. Stitched her arms. She'd been bound for 9 hours. Drugged. But they didn't violate her. No, the choir doesn't rape. They recruit. And punish. They wanted her to deliver a message to me personally. And she did. That night, I stared at the wall of names again. 5 crossed out. 1 left, Emery Blackstone. The financier. The public philanthropist. The silent buyer of Sleeping Beauties. He held the keys to their archives. Photos. Logs. Payments. Transport. If I could reach him, I could blow the whole empire apart. But Alexis's bloody wrists burned behind my eyelids. And I started to ask myself, what's the line? When does justice become a monster too? How many people do I let fall around me before I admit I've become just like them, obsessed with control, with winning, with never being afraid again? And then I remembered what Lucinda said in her tape. We don't lose our souls in one act. We lose them in tiny, justifiable steps. One revenge at a time. So that night, I made a choice. I wouldn't stop. But I would change. The next strike wouldn't be just rage. It would be surgical. Global. Recorded. So the choir couldn't kill it. I contacted 3 whistleblowers. Built a server. Fed it everything. Lucinda's journal, Margaret's confession, Marston's voice, names, dates, video clips, and I wrote 1 file labeled, in case I die, release immediately. Then I packed a small case. A burner camera. A hidden mic. And a vial of powdered fentanyl. Because the next meeting would be face-to-face. With Emery Blackstone. And I wasn't coming to beg. There's a special kind of evil that doesn't scream. It whispers. It smiles. It offers tea before it carves your ribs open. That's the evil I walked into when I entered the halcyon retreat. Owned by Emery Blackstone. Funded by Blackstone Wellness. Marketed as a place for burned-out women over 60 to restore their essence. I had to see it for myself. I went in under the name Cynthia Grace. A fake identity built with documents Alexis forged. Widowed. 67, recently evicted. Desperate for calm. Perfect bait. They welcomed me like royalty. 2 women in beige linen robes. Soft voices. No questions. They took my phone, my bag, even my shoes. Said the outside world pollutes our clarity. I smiled. Let them think I was docile. Inside, I wore a camera in my bra strap, a mic tucked in my hairline, and a tiny vial, powdered fentanyl, hidden inside a tea capsule in my waistband. Emery's gift. His final supper. The halcyon retreat was nothing like a clinic. It was too polished. White halls. Panoramic windows. Handwritten affirmations hung like scripture. There is no past, only peace. Silence is where strength begins. Obedience is the first step to freedom. Creepy, but familiar. They always dress torture in poetry. The first night, they gave us tea. Chamomile and valerian. Said it would help us drift into serenity. I didn't drink, but I watched. 12 women around me. Gray hair. Thin smiles. Some widows. Some divorced. All broken. Like me. I asked quiet questions. How did you find this place? Have you been here long? What do you remember before this? Most had fuzzy answers. Some couldn't remember last names. A woman named Clarice gripped my hand during yoga. Her whisper made my skin crawl. They call it sanctuary. But we're the offering. On the 3rd night, they brought us to the underground level. They called it the chamber. Only 6 allowed in. A special rite, they said. Soundproof. Candlelit. Warm. They sat us in a circle. At the center, a chair. One of the women, a quiet redhead named Joan, was chosen to sit. A robed man came in. Bald. Calm. Behind him, 2 female attendants. They said nothing. They took out a small scalpel and carved a symbol into Joan's back. Not deep, not fatal, but deliberate. A treble clef. I almost vomited. Joan didn't scream. She whispered, "Thank you." Afterward, they gave us new robes. White this time. Said we'd been cleansed. That night, I knew this wasn't healing. It was branding. 2 days later, I saw Emery Blackstone. In the garden. Feeding koi fish. Surrounded by security. He looked like a grandfather in a meditation retreat. But I recognized the eyes. They were Richard's eyes. Dead behind the kindness. I approached. Carefully. Introduced myself. He nodded. Gave that warm, slow smile. "Cynthia Grace," he said. "Your file intrigued me." My hands clenched. He invited me to lunch. The dining room was glass and stone. He sat across from me. Served salad. Poured sparkling water himself. Charming. He asked me about loss. About husbands who forget to love. About the weight of aging. I answered gently. Told him I felt invisible. Worthless. He smiled deeper. "You're exactly what we look for." He reached into his jacket. Pulled out a key. And handed it to me. "To your private sanctuary. A gift. You've earned it." I looked at the gold tag, room V7. He touched my wrist. "You'll find your truth there." That night, I entered V7. No windows. One bed. One camera in the ceiling. A folder sat on the table. Inside? Photos. Dozens. Naked, sedated women. All over 60. In medical restraints. Some with carvings. Behind one photo, a ledger. Payments. Names. Birth years. Mine was on page 6. With today's date. And a stamp, ready. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just took out the tea capsule. Cracked it. Poured the powder into a cup. And waited. At 9:43 p.m. Emery arrived. Alone. "Did you read it?" he asked, almost casual. I nodded. He sighed. "You weren't supposed to." I handed him the tea. "To goodbye," I said. He drank. Smiled. 10 seconds later, he choked. Clutched his throat. Eyes bulged. I leaned close. Whispered, "You'll be a better statue than a monster." He hit the floor, twitching, silent. By morning, they declared a heart attack. His body was cremated by noon. No autopsy. No questions. But the real explosion came next. Because I uploaded everything. The footage. The ledger. The branding. His death. Encrypted. Time released. Sent to 47 journalists. And over 200 abuse survivors. It hit the news like a nuclear wave. Blackstone Wellness exposed as cult-like elder abuse operation. Secret symbols, branded women, trauma tea. How one woman brought it all down. They didn't name me, but they knew. That night, Alexis held my hand. She'd recovered enough to sit beside me, bandaged but unbowed. We sat in the dark. No words. Just the quiet after a kill. And I finally exhaled. For the first time in years. I wasn't hunted. I was the hunter. The news didn't just break. It ruptured. Within 48 hours, women from Oregon to Maine were coming forward. Old women. Soft voices. Wrinkled hands trembling on hospital tables. Each with a scar. A story. A silence that finally shattered. And behind nearly everyone, a whisper of the choir. I watched the coverage from Alexis' apartment. Wrapped in a wool shawl. Knees pulled to my chest. I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. Like exhaling after holding your breath for decades. But victory doesn't knock politely. Sometimes, it kicks your door off the hinges. On the third morning after Emery's death, someone sent a package. No return address. Inside, a VHS tape, a key with the number 13 engraved on it, a note in block letters. Your mother lied. My stomach turned. Because that handwriting, it was identical to the letters I'd received after she died. Let me tell you something about my mother, June. She was a Sunday school teacher. She loved lemon bars. She believed suffering brought you closer to God. She also locked me in a closet for talking back. Scrubbed my mouth with dish soap when I cried at my father's funeral. And once told me, no man will love a woman who doesn't suffer quietly. I spent most of my life trying to forgive her. And most of my adulthood pretending I had. But that VHS tape? It cracked something. So I rented a dusty old player from a thrift shop, closed the blinds, and pressed play. The screen flickered. Home footage. Grainy. 2 women sitting in a garden. 1996. Summer, maybe. One was my mother. The other? Lucinda Blackstone. Emery's sister. And the woman whose journal started this entire war. They were laughing. Drinking iced tea. Then, something strange. Lucinda leaned forward and said, "You sure you want to go through with it, June? That girl is strong. She's not like the others. My mother, that's exactly why she needs to be broken early. We can't risk her becoming aware too soon. Lucinda, what if she remembers? My mother, then we'll make her forget." I screamed. Through the remote across the room. What the hell did they mean? Who were the others? Why would my mother and Lucinda be plotting about me? I replayed the clip 3 times. And saw something I missed. On the table beside them was a folder. On the front, Catherine Project, Phase 1. I stumbled to the sink. Threw up. Years of abuse, of being treated like a defect, and now I realized it wasn't punishment. It was conditioning. It was protocol. That night, I used the key from the package. There was a safe deposit box at an abandoned bank on Fulton Avenue. Inside, a journal. My mother's. And a photograph. Of her, pregnant with me. Standing beside Lucinda, Emery, and Richard. My husband. Long before we were ever married. The note on the back? 3 choir generations. Seed secured. Harvest in 2040. I couldn't breathe. My blood turned to glass. Because if this was true, Richard wasn't just my abuser. He was my handler. And I, Catherine, was never a wife. I was a breeding vessel. A test. AF********ing experiment. I ran. Walked for hours. Sat in an all-night diner, trembling. The waitress asked if I was okay. I asked for vodka. She brought pie. I cried into it. By morning, the media came knocking. Emails. DMs, voicemails. But one stood out, from a woman named Viola Marin, host of a global podcast on cults and systemic abuse. Her message was blunt. I know about Project Catherine. I know what Lucinda did. And I want you to sit across from me and tell the world. I can protect you. But if you vanish now, they win. Attached was an audio file. I clicked. Lucinda's voice. Sobbing. We didn't mean for her to remember. She was just supposed to be the bridge, the one who bore the next generation of choir minds. But she broke the programming. She was never supposed to fight back. That's when I made my choice. No more hiding. No more secrets. And no more protecting the dead. They built this hell. And now? I was going to burn it down with my name stamped across the fire. I never imagined I'd sit in a studio. Microphone in front of me. Cameras. Producers pacing like wolves behind glass. But there I was in Viola Marin's podcast room. The room where women shattered silence. Where justice was spelled in syllables and scar tissue. Viola was sharp-eyed. Silver hair. Voice like steel velvet. She didn't coddle. Her first question was a blade. Catherine, tell the world, in your own words, what the choir did to you. I looked into the lens. And I spoke. I told them about Richard. The beatings. The broken teeth. The time he locked me in the basement for 3 days because I smiled at a waiter. I told them about Emery. The branding. The sedated women. The cult wrapped in yoga mats and herbal tea. And then I told them about my mother. June. The woman who gave birth to me. To sell me. The episode aired within 36 hours. The title? The Choir. One woman's war against generational trauma. It hit 40 million views in a week. Comments flooded in. This was my mother's story. I never told anyone, until now. I was part of the choir's retreat too, and I barely escaped. But the most terrifying message? Didn't come from a viewer. It came from an anonymous number. No words. Just a file. When I opened it, my world stopped. It was a photo. Blurry. Taken through glass. But I knew her. Alexis. My daughter. Lying in a hospital bed. IVs in her arms. Monitors strapped to her skull. A caption below. She's not recovering. She's being reprogrammed. And you delivered her to them. I dropped my phone. Fell to the floor. Screamed. Because I'd thought she was safe. She'd been at my side after Emery's death. She was healing. Laughing even. But now I saw the pattern. The kind nurse who took her blood samples. The new therapist who insisted on private sessions. The fainting spell she had 2 weeks ago. It wasn't exhaustion. It was sedation. I called the hospital. No record of her under Alexis Warren. I called every ER in the state. Nothing. I went back to her apartment. Everything was gone. Clean. No clothes. No toothbrush. Just a Bible left open to one passage. He mocketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Psalm 23. The same verse my mother used to whisper before she hit me. Viola's team traced the photo's metadata. It was taken at a facility outside Zurich. Privately owned. Shielded by Swiss confidentiality laws. And funded by the Constantine Foundation. I'd heard of them. A shadowy philanthropy group tied to wellness programs and behavioral enhancement. I asked Viola for a list of their board members. She pulled it up. My throat closed. Because listed as senior advisor was Dr. Benjamin Caro, my father's college roommate, a neurologist, presumed dead, and a known choir founder, the last surviving one. He was 91 now, but still breathing, still pulling strings. Viola booked a flight that night. Private jet. Fake names. Rented car in Geneva. We drove 6 hours into the Alps. Past resorts. Past clinics. Until we reached a facility that looked like a monastery. Stone walls. Guards with no insignias. No sign outside. Just a gate. We gave the name, Catherine June Warren. The guard stared. Then nodded. As if he'd been waiting. Inside, it was colder than outside. Clinical. No photos. No voices above a whisper. We were led to a chamber. Marble floors. One chair. Dr. Caro sat in it. Pale. corduroy jacket, eyes sharper than any scalpel. He didn't look surprised. "Catherine," he said, "you found the route." I didn't sit. I asked, "Where's my daughter?" He smiled gently. "She's safe. She's home." I felt the rage bubble. "She's not your anything. Let her go." He leaned forward. "No, you don't understand, child. She's not yours either. She never was. She's the fourth." I froze. "What?" He pointed to a screen. It lit up with 4 faces. 1, me. 2, Lucinda Blackstone. 3, an unknown woman. 4, Alexis. He explained, the choir wasn't just a cult. It was a generational mind project. Lucinda was the first. You were the second. Alexis is the fourth. But the third? She escaped. She ran. We believe she's in hiding. And until she's recovered, Alexis must be brought into alignment. I lunged. Viola grabbed my wrist before I could reach him. He just stared. No fear. Just fascination. "You've come further than any of them," he said. "But you still don't understand. You think this was about abuse. It was about evolution. And pain was simply calibration." That was when I made a choice. I pulled the small pistol Viola had smuggled in her boot, aimed it at his knee, and fired. The silence shattered. Caro collapsed. Security burst in. But Viola, God bless her, had set off the lockdown protocol. Doors slammed. Guards froze in autolock. I leaned over Caro, whispered in his ear, "You built this. Now you'll die in it. Alone. Forgotten. Buried in ice." We escaped in a stolen vehicle. 3 hours later, Viola got a call. A nurse. From inside. She had Alexis. And she was ready to hand her over. But only if we made one promise. We'd expose the third. The lost woman. The missing link. Because she held the key to undoing it all. And the worst part? I'd seen her once. Years ago. At a funeral. She looked just like me. And wore the same scar behind her ear. The scar all choir subjects bear. When you've stared into enough coffins, you learn to stop asking for happy endings. I wasn't chasing rescue anymore. I was chasing truth. Even if it killed me. We met the nurse in a train station outside Milan. She was young, no older than Alexis. Eyes red from crying. Hands shaking. She whispered, "Your daughter is alive." But they took her mind apart. Piece by piece. She thinks she's 11. Viola caught me before I fell. They smuggled Alexis into a safe house. She didn't recognize me. She kept asking for Sister June. When I held her hand, she flinched. Her eyes were gone. Not physically. But whatever part had once looked at me with fire and music and trust, it had been turned off. Like a light bulb deliberately unscrewed. I screamed into a pillow that night. Bit into it. Bled into it. But I didn't cry. I planned. Because the nurse told us something that changed everything. There's another. A woman. They call her the third. She has a mark. The same scar as you and Alexis. But she escaped the programming. She's immune. And she wasn't hiding in some distant land. She was living under a different name, in Pennsylvania. Running a flower shop. Her name was Meredith Lane. We drove 12 hours through rain and grief. Viola said nothing the whole way. She knew what I knew. This woman, this third, could end it. Or destroy us. Her shop was quaint. Too normal. Lavender and ash. When I walked in, wind chimes sang above the door. She turned. And my stomach flipped. She was me. Or, could have been. Same eyes. Same chin. Same scar behind the left ear. She froze. Then said, "It took you long enough." We sat in the back. Surrounded by wilting tulips and bitter roses. She poured tea. No words for a minute. Then I asked, "Who are you?" She sipped. Calm. Controlled. Then, "I'm your sister." My world flipped sideways. "Sister?" She nodded. "Same mother. Different womb. I was the beta. The prototype. You were the upgrade." I whispered, "June." She shook her head. "No. Your mother didn't give birth to either of us. We were both surrogate. Lab bred. Incubated." I backed away. Liar. But she pulled out a birth certificate. My name, date, no father listed. Mother, Catherine Noel Blackstone. I felt the floor move beneath me. Lucinda. I breathed. Meredith nodded. She was the mother of us both. And Richard? He wasn't just your abuser. He was your half-brother. I vomited in the sink. Screamed. Clawed at my arms. Viola tried to hold me. But the air was poison now. I didn't ask for this, Meredith said. I ran. I got away. I've been waiting for the other one to wake up. I stared at her. The other one? She nodded. Your daughter. The final truth came like a scalpel. Alexis wasn't mine. She was Meredith's child. Stolen at birth. Implanted into me. Raised by me. Not by mistake. By design. To keep the choir bloodline stable. To make sure Alexis carried the right blend. Lucinda's line. Caro neuroprogramming. My womb, just an incubator. And the worst part? I loved her more than anyone ever had. And it was never enough to save her. Meredith stood and opened a drawer. Inside, vials. Files. A gun. Come with me, she said. I know how to undo what they did to her. But you have to promise me something. I looked up. Tears dried on my cheeks. What? She handed me a folder. On it, Project Lexicon, Deprogramming Phase 1. And a single photograph, Alexis, with a scalpel beside her temple. If we do this, Meredith said, she might forget you forever. But she'll be free. And I made the choice. I'd rather be a stranger to her in freedom than her mother in a cage. We went underground. We built the lab from scratch. Viola broadcasted our findings. The world didn't believe us. Then they did. Then they screamed. Because it wasn't just us. There were hundreds. In care homes. In mental wellness retreats. In psych wards. Women. Old. Silenced. Scarred. With a mark behind the ear. We called them the Forgotten Choir. And we began the resurrection. One mind at a time. But as we prepped Alexis for deprogramming, something happened. Something none of us predicted. She spoke. Clearly. And said, he's still alive. I froze. Who? Alexis looked at me. Eyes like fire again. Richard. He didn't die. You killed a decoy. And he's watching us. Right now. I didn't want to believe it. Richard was dead. I'd seen his blood. He screamed when I pulled the trigger. I watched his chest cave in like a paper bag. But Alexis didn't flinch when she said it. It wasn't him. You killed his shadow. We ran facial reconstruction through Viola's team. The body I shot in the burning lake house, the man who called himself Richard, had dental records that didn't match. He had the same face. Same voice. Same cruelty. But he wasn't Richard Warren. He was built. That night, I went back through everything. All the papers, the recordings, the diaries. I found one photo, almost missed it, a grainy scan of Richard standing beside Lucinda Blackstone, decades ago. But then I looked closer, and my heart stopped. Lucinda was pregnant. Her hand rested on her stomach, and Richard's hand rested over hers. He wasn't just Lucinda's puppet. He was her lover, her child, my uncle, and Meredith's father. That's why he targeted me. Why he hated Alexis. Why he burned every woman who disobeyed. Because this was never about control. It was about erasing the mistake. The choir wasn't his army. It was his exorcism. He needed to burn us to kill himself. We traced his new location to a private bunker in Nova Scotia under the guise of a neurological hospice. But someone betrayed us. Not the world. Not the strangers. Viola. It happened while we slept. She drugged the tea. Alexis was gone by morning. So was Meredith. Just me alone, duct-taped to a rusting hospital bed in the middle of nowhere. A projector flickered on the wall. And there he was. Richard. Still alive. Still smiling. Hair gray now. Beard trimmed. Dressed like a pastor. Hello, Catherine. I hear you've been telling my story all wrong. I spat. He smiled wider. I've been watching you. All of you. Little rebels. Little mice. You think you've escaped the maze. But I built it under the ground. He stepped closer to the camera. His breath fogged the lens. You think I abused you. I anointed you. Then another face appeared on screen. Viola. Eyes dead. She whispered, he found me first. He saved me from a drunk father. He gave me my voice. I sobbed. Not because of the betrayal, but because I believed in her. More than anyone. She had branded herself the angel of survivors. But she was the original serpent. Richard leaned in again. You killed a doll, Catherine. Not the puppeteer. And now I'll do what I should have done years ago. Break you. Properly. He gestured. A door opened. 2 guards entered. And behind them, strapped to a rolling gurney, was Alexis. Eyes open. But glowing. Not with fear. With obedience. Isn't she beautiful? Richard said. She's the perfect version. The one Lucinda wanted. Loyal. Silent. Clean. I screamed. Tore at the restraints. But they held. He wheeled her closer to me. Say something, Alexis, he whispered. She turned. Tilted her head. Mother. You were the test. I am the cure. That was when Meredith appeared. Bloodied. Bruised. But holding a blade. She lunged at the guard beside Alexis, stabbing him through the eye. Before the second guard could react, she fired a shot into his throat. Richard ran. Coward. Always. Meredith untied me. I could barely stand. She cradled my face. You were never a mistake. You were the resistance. Now end it. We stormed the corridor. Gunshots behind us. Alarms blaring. And somewhere, Richard's voice on the intercom, whispering verses like spells. Though I walked through the valley, I found him in the chapel. Alone. Kneeling. Praying. He looked up. Tears on his face. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just said, you don't have to kill me. I already did that years ago. When I became what she built. I lifted the gun. But my hand shook. He smiled. I forgive you, daughter. That word. Daughter. I pulled the trigger. Not once. 7 times. Every bullet a chapter. Every shot a scream I'd swallowed for decades. When the clip emptied, I stepped closer. And whispered, I'm not your daughter. I'm the goddamn reckoning. We burned the bunker. Buried the bodies. And took Alexis home. She didn't speak for days. But one night, she reached for my hand. Looked me in the eye. And said, I remember everything. And I love you. Not because you gave birth to me. But because you never stopped fighting. We were free. But freedom is not peace. Freedom is survival, sharpened by fire. And survival is a flame that never sleeps. We thought it was over. The fire burned. The lab collapsed. Richard's body was buried under steel and flame. But evil. It doesn't vanish. It infects. Alexis smiled again. Laughed. Painted. She sat with Meredith for hours. Made flower crowns from wild vines. She even called me Mom again. But the nights were cold. She would stand by the window for hours, whispering to herself. Sometimes Latin. Sometimes nothing but humming. The same tune Richard used to whistle when he entered the room to beat me. I asked her where she learned it. She said, it's always been inside me. One morning I found Meredith crying in the garden. She held an envelope. Trembling. She handed it to me. Inside was a photo. Alexis. As a child. But not in my arms. In Lucinda's. Smiling. Happy. Controlled. The date? 2 years before she was born. She was never mine, Meredith whispered. She was never yours either. We ran DNA. I didn't want to. But I had to. The results came back in 2 hours. Alexis was not my biological daughter. Or Meredith's. She wasn't anyone's. She was manufactured. Grown. Modified. A perfect vessel. That night, Alexis came to me. She was holding a knife. Not raised. Not threatening. But gentle. Like a child holding a toy. I want to tell you something, Mom. But you have to promise not to scream. I nodded. She sat beside me. Eyes wide. Unblinking. My name was never Alexis. That was just the name they gave the shell. I've had many names. But the one that matters now, she leaned in, is Lucinda. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in bed. Viola was beside me. She held my hand. Spoke softly. It's not possession. It's coding. Trauma pathways built into her cerebrum. Richard downloaded Lucinda's patterns into her. She's not evil, she's haunted. I stared at her. You betrayed us. She didn't deny it. And I lost everything. He used me too. I thought I was helping survivors. I was just grooming them. A pause. Then she whispered, "Let me fix it." We sedated Alexis. Strapped her to a clean table, not a lab. A sunroom. Surrounded by lavender. Soft light. Birdsong. If she was going to be purged, she deserved to see beauty before the war began. Viola began the extraction. She read ancient scripts, not magic, but mental cues. Echo triggers. Cognitive floodgates. The goal wasn't to erase Alexis. It was to separate Lucinda from her. Like peeling fire from skin without burning the flesh. It was working. Alexis cried out. Screamed. Then began to say things. He used to put sugar in my mouth before cutting me. She made me watch the other girls drown. They called it love. It was always fear. I held her hand. Blood dripped from her nose. But her grip tightened. Then silence. Her body went limp. Viola ran vitals. Heartbeat steady. Pulse sharp. Alexis opened her eyes. And said, "It's done." I saw her. I watched her burn. We buried the last of Lucinda's voice that day. Not in soil. In the silence that followed. A silence we earned. But then something strange happened. A letter arrived. No postmark. No address. Just a wax seal. Inside, a note. Written in Richard's handwriting. You took the bait. But the real choir still sings. And the next soloist is already on stage. And attached? A photo. Of a girl. Young. 7 years old. With my eyes. And the scar. Before I begin, I want you to stop scrolling. I want you to look me in the eyes. My name is Catherine Grace Warren. I'm 64 years old. And for most of my life, I thought pain was my purpose. But I was wrong. Pain was just the setup. Power was the punchline. Subscribe, like, and share if this story hit your heart, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If someone ever broke you, made you feel invisible, like your age or your body meant you didn't matter, tell me. I see you. After the photo of that girl arrived, the one with my eyes and the scar, I didn't sleep for 3 days. Meredith begged me to stop. Viola said the choir had dissolved. Alexis, she just wept. But I knew what that note meant. It wasn't over. They weren't breeding an army. They were building a religion. One not of God, but of silence. Submission. Generational grooming, masked as mentorship. And now, some other woman had a daughter. Or worse. A clone. And she would grow up with the same lies etched into her skin. I couldn't let that happen. Not again. We traced the paper in the letter. Belgian linen stock. Rare. Military grade. The seal? Roman. Used by the Harvest Society, an underground network tied to psychiatric hospitals, fertility clinics, and elder rehabilitation centers across Europe and the U.S. I'd heard rumors of them. They didn't kill women. They unwrote them. Turned them into nurses, secretaries, stepmothers, obedient ghosts of what they once were. It was Richard's insurance policy. The choir was franchise. We followed the trail to North Dakota. An isolated community. No names on mailboxes. Only a symbol, a pair of wings stitched shut with thread. We walked through the gates disguised as auditors. The girl from the photo? She was there. Playing hopscotch. Alone. She looked up at me. And whispered, "You're the fire lady." My knees buckled. She didn't run. She touched my face. "He said you'd come. He said if you find me, you'll know what to do." I asked, "What's your name?" She blinked. "Catherine. Same as you." They named her after me. A taunt. A dare. A twisted trophy. We didn't run. We stayed for 3 days. We listened. We learned. And we watched as dozens of women, most over 60, moved like perfect machines through the halls. Not talking. Not blinking. Some had children beside them. Some were pregnant. All had the scar. We couldn't fight them head-on. So Meredith planted the virus. A neurological disruptor, coded from the original deprogramming protocol Alexis, survived. We triggered it during morning prayers. One by one, the women stopped moving. Then they screamed. Not in pain. In recognition. They remembered everything. Chaos erupted. And in the fire, I found her. The girl. My namesake. She stood beside a fallen statue. She held my hand. And said, "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer. Because she wasn't a weapon. She was a mirror. A second chance. We brought her home. Adopted legally. No programming left in her. She paints now. Sings off-key. Asks too many questions. And when I look in her eyes, I see me before the bruises. Before the silencing. Alexis teaches art therapy. Viola, she's still not forgiven. But she's building shelters for older women. Women who never had a voice. Meredith and I? We speak. We write. We tell the truth. Even when it burns. Especially when it burns. Because you deserve to hear this. You're not too old to matter. Not too broken to fight. And not too late to win. They used our silence like cement. We broke it with screams. This isn't just my story. This is every woman who had her worth reduced to wrinkles. Every soul dismissed because her skin sagged or her voice shook. Every survivor who stayed quiet too long. If you've been hurt, tell me in the comments. If you've ever been silenced, tell me where you're from. And if you survived what was meant to destroy you, then like, share, and subscribe. Because the world needs to hear you now. Ashes of grace, the fire doesn't end us. It forges us. Forever.